Hello, everyone, and welcome to Table Talk. I think this is episode 4, if we're counting. Maybe I should do a little better at that. Yeah.
Don't tell them which number. That way they can watch them in whatever order they want, and they won't feel like they're behind.
That's true.
But we have to... How will we know when we hit a milestone if we don't keep track?
That's also true.
Spreadsheets.
It'll be a secret number.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to talk about custom 3D components that meaningfully change the game mechanics or the experience of the game. So not simply just, this could have been a token and it's a mini, it's a cool sculpted mini, but things where it's a gadget. Maybe another word for these kind of games might be toyetic, which is one of those things that depend. Some of these games, maybe not all of them, but toyetic I think has a lot of overlap with needing 3D components, and toyetic is something to consider when you're trying to find a hook for a game. It is not the easiest to prototype, obviously, but right. it's one of the things that can be something that hooks people in and makes it a product.
What was really interesting to me when I saw this on the topic list, I wasn't sure like how are we going to approach this or how relevant it might be, but with the easier access to 3D printers or with the lower cost of being able to directly acquire components through something like Game Crafter or something like that, people can now get components to prototype with, but then also it's a little bit easier to see what it might look like or even cost if you were to go through and take this all the way through production for a Kickstarter, for example.
And well, the Game Crafter also has a lot of custom laser cut things, so you could make 3D components that you could build with either chipboard or acrylic.
Yeah, like
done for something. Yeah,
something like this. They had a contest recently where they who was it? It's the game group that has the Tiny Furry Games or Small Furry Games, I think was the group behind it. Small Furry Games, yeah. And I think that's Emily. And they had the idea, they gave people like templates for things like this to build these little 3D, I don't know what you would even call this, but it's from cutouts. And yeah, when you start thinking about seeing something from just two perspectives and building something like this, there's a lot of fun things you can make for a really low cost. Like cutout chipboard is very inexpensive compared to buying a 3D printer yourself or buying custom design resin sculptures and things like that.
Totally. Yeah, so what do you two think about like kind of my special thing I have on the floor? Do you think that's the finale or the first thing I should show?
Well, you already mentioned toyetic. I think it's probably the one that most people would be familiar with. What do you think, Michael?
It's definitely familiar for people, whether they are new to games, I think, or playing for a long time.
Yeah.
It's one of the most familiar, both inside of gaming hobbies and outside. I want to see it, but I don't mind stringing people along a little bit longer, or just giving people a chance to join into the stream.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Because usually with Twitch, there's like a lag time as people see the notification, and then they finish microwaving their chips and salsa, which is a strange way to prepare chips and salsa. You should probably do that in an oven or an air fryer, and then make their way over to the conversation. So maybe hold it just a little bit longer.
Okay.
But I'm excited to have you show that off. I wonder if I can flip my camera here.
Well, you've got your special setup. We could talk about the one you have set up too first, Michael.
Sure. I can jump into that now.
Sure, I won't be bringing up later, so I'll just kind of play with
That's
that.
a good. Yeah, I like that. Everyone's given a little bit of a teaser for what's coming later.
Certainly will come into play later.
Before we, I would be glad to show off what I have on the table here. Before we get into that, do we want to give like a 2-minute overview of how we're defining this topic, things that we don't have to get into the details, but just generally what we're talking about, and maybe some of the functions or the roles that 3D design components have in games. Yeah, get a word from Professor J, and then go in from there.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know about that.
Oh, and I'll say, if you're watching and you can, let us know you're here in the chat, so
Yeah, say hi.
We're aware of who's watching, or as much as we can be. We like to know.
Say hello, anonymous 2 to 3 people, and we will say hi back.
Yes.
What I'll say about what's great about 3D materials is, as a designer, particularly a novice designer, it's easy to grab something, and the tactile element of it is helpful, not only if you use it just as it is, but also to think about, what if I stack these? What if I put them next to each other? What if I try to bounce something else off of it? And I've been very fortunate that over the years, a number of different sponsors have donated hundreds, if not thousands, of prototyping components to our prototype lab at UW Stout. And some of the earliest exercises that we do is basically go back there, and I will grab a handful of random components and put them in a bag and go around to each table and drop them off. And all right, you've got to the end of class to make something out of this. Like, make what? Well, it's kind of up to
whatever you want.
And then by the end of the semester, some of the more ambitious students will make their own 3D models. One did a game about the Ice Age. So they made little melting polar ice caps that stacked on top of each other, and you would remove as the ice caps were melting. And otherwise, they might take either something as simple as dice that stack on top of each other, or other components that they found, making little X slot pieces like Michael had showed you with that cactus piece of terrain, where it's really, really easy to just take two pieces in the Vulcan grip and slide them together to be able to form a solid connection and a basis. And it really, for a lot of them, they've seen games that have 3D pieces like Monopoly, but those pieces are a great example of what Heather was talking about, that don't need to be 3D. You could play Monopoly and have all of those materials be represented by chipboard and still play Monopoly, but it does enhance the experience. However, it's not vital. And I think what we're leaning toward a little bit more, and correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, are those elements that either greatly enhance the game, or you literally could not play the game if these components were not 3D.
Yeah, and I think that makes it just a more interesting topic, because there are lots of games that have shaped components in them for fun. One I did grab off the shelf because I bought it recently, and as we've talked about on the stream before, I'm a big Disney person, and I hadn't yet played this.
Oh.
But we bought it. It was on a great sale, and
Fantastic game.
Bought it. And it's an example of what we were talking about a lot last week, a asymmetric game. So you're kind of each playing your own game as a different villain, but it has what Jay is talking about. You don't need this, but it feels really satisfying to have this chonky Maleficent piece, or this chonky Queen of Hearts piece.
And if you've got the license, such as Disney or Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, and you can make those pieces, that really helps connect the license to the gameplay itself. So again, while not technically needed, they certainly enhance a game like Villainous. That's a really good example.
Yeah, that's Jafar. Hook.
Go.
You can see his hat. And this one was what would you guess? It was hard for me to guess. Who do you think this is?
It's a Chalice King John from Robin Hood.
Yes, that's right.
Ah, nicely done.
I've played Villainous before.
Oh, so
You've
it's not
cheated.
really a very good guess. What do you guess for this one?
Ursula,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good one, yeah.
So
we've watched Little Mermaid a few times in our house recently.
So yeah, I mean, just because we'll never have another time either to talk about, like, I don't think we have miniatures. Well, actually, we might have miniatures now that
I think miniatures are their own topic, which is why I do have Gloomhaven. That's the only miniatures I really have to show off, and I saved those because we might hit that later.
Yeah,
but of course.
Know if I'd call this a miniature. It kind of is.
So
this is maybe the right time to bring it up, right?
What's the word for that, Jay? What did you call it?
If it's something that's going to move around the board to represent your positioning, it's often just going to be called a mover.
Is that a different from a miniature, or is a miniature a type of mover?
So a miniature usually has, or the way that we define them in class again so that everyone's on the same page, is something that you're going to be using to specifically represent something else among a breadth of different options. For example, in X-Wing, you've got X wings and A wings and Y wings, so you are getting a miniature of the X wing
Ah,
because it can be part of a breadth. Same thing with something like Warhammer 40K. There are so many different armies and so many different units that when you have a specific one representing a specific piece with specific stats, that I would reference as a miniature, whereas the Maleficent piece that could be replaced by a pawn or a cardboard piece, since all of those technically could just be used to move and show your position more readily. I call
so
those movers.
I've been using that wrong, and that's good to know. Thank you. Are chess pieces miniatures then?
I would consider those to be, well, I guess it would also depend on the level of detail that you have and
Okay.
how attached you are to them. These aren't necessarily official terms. There are very few official terms in
Yeah.
the game industry, which as designers can be confusing, and which is why sometimes you have to make sure that you lay out your vocabulary beforehand. And especially when I'm teaching game design to art students and to programming students, they each have their own baked in language. And if we don't come up with a common definition early on, then they'll be having a conversation that they're actually talking against each other because they're both using the term development, which means very different things to the two disciplines, right? So,
Well, now that we've laid out our terms, let me show you the game that I wanted to bring to for today's example for 3D components. This is Cult Express. I've got oh, it's inverted. Anyway, this is Cult Express. It comes in your classic standard like 12 by 12 inch box, and it's a big hit with my 12. Yeah, it's like a 1 foot. That doesn't matter. It's a box, and my family really enjoys playing it. So I've got more casual gamers among my sisters, and even with my parents, and they'll play stuff from classic games like we're talking about Monopoly, all the way up into maybe something that takes 90 minutes to 2 hours, but they'd shy away from something beyond Scythe in complexity. And this is a really fun spot for us because when you're used to those traditional flat board games, those 2D games, this is a really new experience. So Cult Express is a game about primarily action programming. Every character who has, I guess this is a type of mover, right? This is a custom meeple. Every character is represented by a meeple, and you play cards that will dictate your movement. Things like move up or move down, or shoot, or punch, or steal, or move to the left, but they're left open-ended. And players play out what they think they want to do, partially in secret, and then all the cards are revealed, and they and then in action programming style, which we might come back to this game later if we hit that topic, things get a little bit messy because what you thought you were going to do is impacted by what everyone else has done. You get to resolve that. I think this game works really well with that mechanic because well, for two reasons. And we mentioned 3D components have a couple different purposes. One is mechanical. Does it actually impact the game in some way? So Jay held up a little three-dimensional polynomino of some type earlier, and I imagine that game could not be played in the same way without those because it's about stacking. There's a game called Monastery, I think. It's a 2-player versus wood and block game that works kind of like Blockus does, and it would not work if it wasn't for the 3D physical shapes. So that's
even
one element
Jenga.
here.
Something as simple as Jenga wouldn't work if those were solid, thick, three-dimensional pieces. Probably the most simplistic scale. What I like about this, even before you go on, is I can see the scenery, but I can also tell what is clearly a game component.
Yeah.
So that you get the nice like lushness of the printed pieces that are connected to create this really good three-dimensional area, but you're not hunting through it to try to find game elements.
Yeah, and they pop out. So the other side, in my opinion, to 3D components, besides the physical game, which matters a lot, is they can sometimes meaningfully add to the experience. And I think in this case, Cold Express does both. Because what we get when we play the game is we get immersive storytelling. We actually set aside a player whose role it is just to be the narrator, and the narrator will take the deck that's been played out, and usually you just have a player go through it and say, okay, player 2, you get to move left, and so on and so forth. We do it kind of like a light RPG, where the narrator will reveal the action and tell the player to take their action, whether it's go up or down, and then the narrator will add flavor to that. So, each of these meeple has a bandit tied to them, characters like the ghost, and so they'll be like, well, then the ghost swings down into the cabin car, but the sheriff's waiting for him, and he fires off 2 shots. Ghost, you take 2 damage. And so it's like a light RPG almost from this very kind of simple, playful game. And I think that works because, like you said, Jay, there's an entire environment here. And it asks for storytelling. It asks for you to imagine yourself on a train car. And so the 3D space, I think, plays into that really well. So this is a really fun game. If you have it, I recommend, if you have a good group, to try playing it that way with some story added to it. And I think this shows both how the 3D elements add to the experience of the game, because you could play this almost on a flat surface, not quite, but also the physical components do matter. In this case, it's verticality. The only gameplay really here is height. So there's 2 levels of play, and people can move above and below people. But you could probably represent that with like 2 side-by-side tracks on a board, and I don't think I'd be interested in playing that game at all. So this is the game for me where the 3D is what makes it a game worth playing, and the exact same game on paper just wouldn't be that fun. What's
the ideal player range? About how long does it take to play? And do you have an idea about what that price point is?
For this game?
Yeah.
So those are inverted, but it says about 40 minutes to play. I think it takes us about an hour. It's 2 to 6 players, and I don't think 2 is that much fun, but 3+ is a good time. And it says ages 10 and up, but my 6-year-old could play this game, especially with help. Yeah, it's got chunky pieces, and no matter who you are, the action programming is going to mess you up. So like your decisions matter, but in a way a person making all good decisions still might not win. This game has a lot of Mario Party-esque randomness to it, if you know what I mean by that. And it's because the gameplay is quick and you can line it back up, that's okay. Usually people don't come out of it feeling bad, because if they did terribly and all their gold was stolen and all of their plans were thwarted, there's a funny story that's tied behind that. And I think that makes it a really good experience, even though the experience is not usually focused on winning. I think the price is like $40, but I'm not positive. I think it's $40.
For that age range, one of the worst kept secrets in the industry is like age range is the one that's not lied about, but stretched the most, because oftentimes it has to do with safety certification.
Yeah.
And you have to pay extra if you want your game safety certified. And that's usually based on a younger audience with smaller pieces that become choking hazards. So if you say that this game is for 10 and up or 13 and up, you can have smaller pieces saying that this is aimed at a older audience, and they are less likely to put these pieces in their mouth. Ergo, the age range is often the one that tells you the least when you're looking at who you are, what you do, how you win, and then your age range, time range, and player age.
It also seems like age range is kind of always nonsense, because it super depends on the person.
Yeah. I wanted to jump in real quick and say we did get a subscriber, Baron von Scump. Thank you. Thanks
for keeping an eye on that, Michael, because I'm not on Twitch and I'm not seeing it in the studio. So,
Baron, if you're still here, let us know what your favorite game is of 3D components, and maybe we can pull it up and talk about it on the show.
We can also celebrate a little bit. You're a new subscriber.
Heather and Jay, I learned a lesson around age restrictions, or just the age, putting the age on the box, because I made a game and then tried to like small scale, like limited print, self-publish it, and ran into there are rules around selling things and marketing things to people under a certain age. And so I thought my game was appropriate for 6 and up. Turns out, like Jay said, that's there's a lot more involved, even if the gameplay is targeted towards a certain audience. And that's why I was told games often show 12 and up. So yeah, I did not know that. And I learned that the hard way. So that's a good designer lesson for beginning designers is don't overthink that age in the box. If you're not sure, just say 12 plus or 18 plus. And those are like good broad categories to dump your game into.
Yeah. With Game Crafter, I don't think you're allowed to put anything below 12 or 13, right? Is that what is that kind of how you learned that?
Yeah. You're not, yes. But what you can and can't do depends on how closely they're looking at your game. Like you can't choose the option for under 12 plus on their two options, but they don't explicitly state there why. It's written in their in their Q&A, and you have to kind of go reading to find it. But there's no one to stop you from uploading a picture of your box and your box saying 6+ on it in a graphic, at least until your game gets some visibility on it or is in the middle of a crowd sale. So yeah, just take caution when there are rules around selling things to people of different age groups, and apparently, like Jay said, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to nail that age range, right?
No. And sometimes it's impossible to know, like Heather said, it depends on the kid. Magic the Gathering, what age is that appropriate for? My younger son started playing that at 7, and he was already more competitive coming into it at 7 than my older boy was at 11. So Magic, it's hard to say. Is that based on language? Is that based on your ability to think about the mechanics? No, it's based on if you can have fun with it and who else is there to support and help you play.
Right. Yeah, because what does play mean, right? Play it well, you know what I mean? Be able to engage with it at all.
There's definitely ranges there. I do think helpful things like you don't have to be able to read to play this game. That kind of information is very useful to potential buyers and players, because then they know what they're getting into. And that, again, that's still not age specific. Like, when do you start to read? At whatever reading level is still a bit general. Heather, do you want to show off what you have sitting on the floor?
Sure. I don't have a dual camera fancy thing like you've got going on, so I'm just gonna have to swing my camera around and watch what everybody sees. But yeah, this is the classic.
Go for a trip.
Yeah, field trip.
Get on the Magic School Bus. Here we go.
Yeah. Mousetrap. And this is Mousetrap from when I was a child, probably purchased in the early 90s.
Oh, wow. And, that was still sitting around in your house? That's so cool.
That's when you were a child?
Me too, Jay. Me too.
I feel old.
And this tells you sort of what type of child I was. I was an only child. I actually played it according to the rules, which are that, like, all those numbers that you see on the board are how many pieces you get to add to the contraption. So as you're going around, starting at start. So it's a roll and move game, normal sort of childhood thing. And the trap is not built when you start. And so there's an order. All the pieces are numbered, and there's an order you're supposed to put them together. And obviously it builds a Rube Goldberg machine, and I tested my memory on if I remembered how to just put it together. I was here in the studio with Michael and thought, and Michael said I set up Colt Express. I was like, well, I gotta get on that. So I actually just put it together from memory in like 10 minutes. So I'm impressed with myself. But let me see if I can. Here's the hard thing: is I need both hands to turn the crank. So I need to make sure I can put this down and let you see what I'm doing, so you can see how the Rube Goldberg machine works. Yeah.
Speaking of playing games however we want to, especially as kids, I did not even remember there was that there were spaces and movement. I exclusively played this as a Rube Goldberg machine. I set it up and I watched it go to the end, and then I set it up again, and then I went and built my own. Which shows how fun the 3D components are. That you can just skip the board part of the game.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the idea is actually catching the mice here.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let me get over here. So the beginning
See
of
it?
this is crank.
Oh, yes.
Yay!
Amazing.
Childhood. So there we go.
What's great about some of these games, particularly ones that actually are crafted for younger players and safety certified for all that and so on, Zaki Games does that a lot, is the pieces are nice enough that they really help with the gross motor skills and fine motor skills for assembly or for being able to pick up and move around. One game, Gulo Gulo by Zaki, has these different sized eggs that you're trying to pull out of a nest. So depending on the size of the egg, it's easier or harder to do, and that really helps with your fine motor skills. Whereas assembling something or stacking blocks in a Jenga tower, taking it out might be fine motor, placing it might be more gross motor, depending on what you have. Make and break or stack it or others work on those differently. But yeah, I remember a lot of those. Even just stacking blocks is the proto version of a lot of these games, just to get those skills down.
I've just thought of a game. I'm going to leave camera for 30 seconds and come back, and it's a quick thing, but you guys just jogged my memory, so I'll be right back.
Okay. And hello, Joachim. I'm glad to see you're feeling better, more up to joining us this week, because I know you were having a week or two of not feeling so good, so it's good to see you again. We are talking games in which the 3D pieces make the experience, or you would not be able to play the game the same way without those. And I'm actually curious if in Germany, Mousetrap is a big cultural phenomenon, or if you're like, what even is that? That would be interesting to know to me. Also, I've been like kind of, I've been paying attention to Jay and Michael, all their stuff they're saying, but I've been also assembling another thing that is, this is, to be fair, it is what you might call a knockoff version of a more famous game, but that more famous game, as far as I know, is out of print. It's called Click-Clack Lumberjack. But this is Bamboo Bash, which is something I think that's not out of print yet. And you see some sneak peeks at some other games that I think have 3D components. But the Click-Clack Lumberjack, I might need to read the rules to this to see what's different. But you have, in this one, you have a claw, right? And a little panda. But in Click-Clack Lumberjack, you all have axes, and you have to tap this a certain number of times, and pieces falling off is bad. So, or good. No, I think it might be good. You want to tap it. Anyway, but these
is
little...
it like Jenga?
It's like pieces that come out without knocking it over, I believe.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, okay. So if the center comes off, it's minus points. So there's like a center piece here. There. So that would be a failure because I think if I knocked off that whole top piece, I would get like minus points for this center piece and positive points for these sides that came off. But probably in a sense where the best thing you can do is hit it such that you have to tap it twice, or like you get 2 taps. That would be 1 point.
So you want some of it to come off, but you don't want to knock it over.
Right. Yeah, and they fall out. There's an expansion, like a simple expansion to Click-Clack Lumberjack, where you put stickers inside some of these that have grubs, and you get extra points if the one you knock off, and it's like random.
And even though I only saw a third of it, I saw that you had the game Splat, which is a Play-Doh game. That's a big game from my childhood.
I remember that. I played that game
all the time.
I'll talk about that now then.
Yes. So, wait, before you jump into it, just to call out what Joachim was saying, apparently there is a different Swedish Mousetrap game. You can't send the link, I think, because links are disabled in chat, but I'll see if I can find it and send it over for maybe Heather to pull up later after we go through these, because I'm curious what that's about as well.
I thought it was a swear word in Swedish.
No, it's redacted.
All links are swear words. So go on with Splat. I'll see if I can find that and pull it up. But I'm so excited you brought up Splat because I forgot that existed, and that was so fun when I was 5 or 6 or 7.
Well, and so it came with Play-Doh. It came with like brand name Play-Doh, but Play-Doh dries out. It's frustrating and annoying. So actually, recently I decided that I was going to upgrade mine to have Silly Putty in it, which is never going to dry out. I found that, so little tip if you want to do that, it gets really stuck in the mold for the bugs that you make, but a little bit of vegetable oil or something like that just rubbed around in the mold will help it pop out. But so you have this bug guy that is the mold. You press whatever it is that you're putting in here, and then his head pushes it out, and you get a bug. And this is actually, I find it to be quite a fun roll and move game. Well, you don't roll. It's more like Candyland. You have cards that have colors on them. And the premise is that, like you saw, that you're trying to steal cookies. Your bug's trying to steal crumbs and cookies. And the humans are trying to kill you. And so when you draw a card, there's just colors on the board. But these spaces that are black and yellow, there's no cards that have that in them. It's not possible to draw a card that has this on it. So it's like a safe space. But like, let's say I'm on green and another player lands on this splat. You draw cards both to move, and then when you land on splat, you draw a card to see which ones you splat. If they were to draw a green card, you have this thing, and you splat them onto the spot. And then that space isn't there anymore. Everybody has to skip over it. And so there's a little, you have 4, I think like Trouble, you have 4 pieces, or Parcheesi. So it's kind of like Candyland, and Parcheesi, and playing with Play-Doh, all mixed together.
So I no longer have a desire to play Candyland or Parcheesi, although I have played both within the last 2 days because I have children of that age. But I would love to play Splat with them. And the difference to me is the physical, tactile, 3-dimensional component. I want to squish something. That's super fun. I don't just want to move a token back to home. I assume that's why that stood out to you.
Yes, and the game, well, this is not having to do with the 3D component. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the physically getting the squash things, these pieces that are super fun. It's fun to make your bugs. It's fun to splat the bugs. And the game is actually a fun game because it progresses quickly because you start filling up all these spaces with splats. So then the board gets shorter quickly. Yeah. Which makes the pace of the game good too. The fact that you leave the splats out. And so
that's really smart.
We've got a sly watcher that's also in our Discord and has put this in Clubhouse so we can share.
So I have a lot of fond memories.
I put it in private chat for you.
Okay, thank you.
Playing Splat in Southeast Wisconsin on the picnic table with my friends, sipping lemonade. Now I don't feel as old.
There you go.
It's still old.
The games still bring us together. Here's one more real quick one. This won't take long. This is a game I play with my kids. I've bought it for 3 other families because I really like it. It's like 2 to 4-year-old age. It's good motor skills. It's a good get up and moving, and it is a game with a die and a game with colors. And you have stacks of piles of cards. And when the whatever side the die rolls on, you take a card from there and you do the thing. And the things are very simple, childlike things. Like if a yellow card tells you to make a face, it says make a surprised face. The blue cards tell you to find something of a certain color, in this case blue. But what is most fun about the game is they get to grab this big plushy die and hurl it at something and roll it. And so again, I guess just thinking of like standout, unusual physical components, this takes a game that could easily have been a 12 millimeter 6-sided color die and that would have been forgotten quickly. And it makes it child safe. It makes it interesting. It makes it stand out, and it makes it a gift that I buy for other people. So I like things like that.
What did you say it was called, Michael?
What is this called? I think the name is terrible. I think it's called Roll and Play Your Child's First Game.
Wow.
That is at least what it says on the cards. But yeah, I mean, it is all the games you play with kids. You know, make a face, find something of this color. What sound does this animal make? But it's in a manageable way. It has this fun plushy thing, and then also it has an end to it. Like you can get through all the decks and then the game's over. So it's a very contained thing. And all the components are just really kid friendly. You know, this is tear resistant paper, and it's big, and a lot of them have food stains. This is a well-loved, well-played game by all three of our girls.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good tip for like people who want to teach their kids to like games.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you can get started with really, really early.
Yeah.
So there's the range of games. There's a monster game. Is it Slappin' Salmon? But the game that comes in a little bag that looks like a salmon. And
Happy Salmon.
Happy Salmon.
Happy Salmon.
There
Right.
are 2 different colors of those so that you can put them together and create even more. And I've got my freshman students playing that early on, and they just get to be big and loud and silly. But there are like 4 or 5 different games in that series. And each one has a different zippable, foldable one. That it's the packaging that's tactile, and then inside the game is just
cards. But that's true. But the package is like part of the experience. You know, when you take that package out, people are like, "What?"
But it's fun to roll and roll in your hands because it's a nice soft neoprene. Anyway, I want to show 2 of the games that and I didn't notice until actually I had pulled them together that they're both Kramer and Kiesling games from Rio Grande. The first one is Torres, which the first edition of Torres might be the most beautiful box and some of my favorite art ever, where it's got this classical art, but also these clipped articles and newspaper pieces that have been kind of collaged together. And the board is constructed that way as well. So it's just this beautiful, beautiful piece of art. It's one of those pieces that if I had an extra, I would absolutely frame it. But it's called Torres, which is tower. And it's basically about building up towers using these plastic pieces that have an inset groove on it. So the 2 of them sit on top of each other, but it's loose enough where they don't click in like a Lego would. So it's still very, very loose and easy to put them on. And they can go up to 5 or 4 towers tall. And they've got these little archways in them so that you can actually see and envision that you're supposed to be able to move through them. So it's on a gridded board, and you would be stacking up these towers to indicate where you've got territory over the course of the board, and you've got little meeples that move, and they can move up or down tower segments. Now, a game like Tikal uses height with just cardboard, or at least in the earlier editions it did. And technically you could do that with Torres as well, but there is something about it being much, much larger and much more proportional to the meeples that you're moving around that makes it a lot more satisfying. And then when you start getting larger sprawling masses that build across the board, and of course I don't want to have this slip and fall off, it's a lot more satisfying as well to be able to see these structures that you build. So like think of it like a vertical Carcassonne that you're building as you play.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice to be able to do. Yeah. And then the other game by Kramer and Kiesling that I've mentioned in a previous one is Pueblo, another one of my favorite games that uses 3D pieces, but then also 3D sight lines, where you've got 3-dimensional polygon. So basically dominoes of different shapes and sizes rather than your standard ones. And they're just 3D molded plastic, and they come in several different colors. There's a neutral beige, and then there are a number of different player colors. Let's see if I can pull this together without having too many of them slip off. So you'll see that, nope, they're all going to slip. But you're able to put them on. And actually the side view is great because you score based on how many sides are available there. So if we were scoring from this side, purple would score 2 points and red would score 3 points. But then as the board rotates, since you're only scoring for the number of colored faces you're seeing, purple would score 1 point here, while red would score 1 point for the one that you can see all the way around. And as the scoring piece moves around the board, rather than the board rotating, you're going to see different ways of scoring. So I might want to place my pieces differently to try to block the number of sides that my opponent has visible as the scoring piece is moving around here. So it's really nice because you could not do this with flat pieces. And there's the three-dimensionality of not only the pieces that you're stacking and building, but this extra level of your point of view and perspective shifts throughout the game. So am I going to try to score right now by placing something here, or am I going to try to score more later by building up the backside of this piece? So when it does get around here, not only am I blocking up Michael's pieces, but I've got more of my pieces shown and facing there so that they can be scored.
What a cool mechanic. And I mean, and it very literally takes the third dimension into play as you're scoring, not just verticality, but you're literally looking at things from different perspectives. There's a pretty famous indie video game called oh no, it's not super important. It's the name of Fez, the hat, but it's all about looking at this cube and basically rotating environments, and you see a whole new 2D perspective as it rotates around. So think about scoring that way. Yeah, thank you. It's called Fez. That's really fun. It makes me want to play that. It makes me want to think about that.
So those are the first two games that came to mind regarding static pieces that you put on the board. A recent one that I kickstarted is Dice Miner. Came out last year or the year before, and it comes out with this really, really nice sculpted mountain. And
I know nothing about this game, and I already want to touch it because it's not flat. Like, I'm very interested immediately. Yeah.
So it's got this really nice, and you set it out flat, and then you're going to slide dice down. So as you set up each phase, you're dropping dice down the mountainside, and they're going to set up and form this grid. So gravity works too. And then as you play, you're going to be drafting dice. So if I take a die from further down,
it slides.
It's going to slide out, and the other dice are going to drop down gravity-wise and fill up its place. Now, I guess technically you could play this on a board and designate one side of the board to be down or south and slide tiles around. But it would be so much more difficult than just being able to reach in, pull something out, and have everything else slide and click into place. So there's this really satisfying physicality to this. And there's the standard set that comes with a cardboard version of this, which is put together with slats and pieces, kind of like the X-Cross pieces of what you showed before with Colt Express. And it's assembled that way. But the deluxe version comes with this plastic resin piece, which of course I couldn't pass by. I wanted to have it. I wanted it for me and mine. But it's beautiful, and it does a great job of taking something, and all these extra ridges are unnecessary, but it helps sell this theme of mining. We're all dwarves mining treasure in the deep. And then the dice, it's got lots of different dice of lots of different colors, and they're nice chunky pieces, and being able to grab that and pull that out, there's a nice tactile element to it, which the dice provide. But that's another game that I think does a great job of leveraging three-dimensionality with a component that is technically the board, and then with the components that are the play pieces during play itself.
I've thought a lot about markets and rotating markets, and the fact that gravity comes into play and how that market rotates is really, really satisfying. Plus, I want to put those dice in my mouth, which is a compliment.
They look like candy.
The last game that I had grabbed doesn't actually use 3D pieces in that way, but it uses a 3D element in a much more distinct way, and that would be Sheriff of Nottingham. So a lot of Sheriff of Nottingham are elements that we would expect. We've got beautiful cards, we've got nice cardstock pieces for coins and for characters, but the real key to the game are these fabric bags, because you're trying to sneak goods into or past the Sheriff of Nottingham. So you'll have cards that represent different goods like cheese or bread or maybe even some legal goods. Now, as the player, I'm going to put a number of cards inside the little pouch and then snap it shut. And there's that nice distinctive snap sound. And that sound indicates that you're done. And that's your like final offer. I'm now 100 locked into this being my turn. So you can always go, well, back and forth. Like, if you give me $5, I won't smuggle anything across. Well, no, I don't know. But as soon as you snap that closed, you're in for whatever it was. And then everybody turns their bags in to whoever the sheriff is for the round. And the sheriff can decide to peek into any one of the bags that they want if they think that somebody is lying or trying to smuggle goods in. And so instead of just handing them a small little deck of cards that have been maybe shuffled or might get worn out, there's something about everybody throwing these into the center and the sheriff picking these up and playing with them and going through them and going, no, you know what, Heather, I'm not going to trust you. So let's see here. You hear that snap and I look and it's like, no, 3 cheese, and that's perfectly legal. All right, your goods get across and I guess I have to pay you some money now. But it's hard to explain just how incredibly satisfying this is tactily, because it's soft, velvety fabric, but then also that snap element to indicate that you're locked in, and passing these back and forth. It would not be the same game at all whatsoever if you were just handing over a small little deck of cards and then putting, for example, like a yellow token on it to indicate that this is yellow's offering or whatever it might be for the round.
It's so also very thematic. You know, it's your sack that you're walking across the border with. Well, I feel like this is a really good example that it's a relatively new game that I should show everybody, called Planet. And you know, this is Can
you make yourself bigger?
Can I make myself bigger? Oh yeah, embiggen. I can do that. Thank you for reminding me. This game. So I played it with Will recently, and he says, you know, not a perfect game. There's a lot of like, I don't know, as far as caring about winning and stuff, there might be some things that feel a little unfair about it. Mm-hmm. But as far as, it's a drafting game, and you each have one of these globes, and these are magnets. So
I already love it.
You draft.
I'm sold. It's a toy.
Yeah, it's just very fun. Like you're trying to attract animal cards. That's what this means. The biggest or the most desert spaces that are unique to each other. So like,
it's currently an Amazon's Choice, Prime, 1-day shipping. This would be one, isolated desert. So for that, and then there's also having the biggest area of a certain thing, etc. And you have the cards all. There's some, you know what? I don't know if unfair is the right thing. There's some fiddliness with it, just how you need to set up the board and such. But and also you need to say like, okay, well, I'm going for like there's a goal out there on the board for us to get a big forest. How much forest do you have? How much forest do you have? And there's a rule that you can look at anybody's globe at any time. But it's kind of like, okay, pass me your globe. Okay, you know what I mean? So there's some things that are a little fiddly. Something that could be automatically tracked if that were electronic, or if there was like a track on the board. So that does sound a little fiddly. But mine should arrive tomorrow morning. So,
but yeah, it is.
What does
very
it say that Heather's like? Heather's giving
on.
us all these reasons for why the game is like not great and a little bit broken, and we're like, I want it now. I would need to hold it.
I just popped open another tab. Right.
I'm not listening to what you're saying.
I'm just trying to be,
that's a great sign.
Person, right? But yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah.
But it's still, I played it at a convention, but I remember thinking this feels like a game I want to have in my collection for playing with new gamers, because it's just going to draw them in.
That's something that 3D elements can do that sometimes a flat map just can't, or flat tiles can't. You can see that from across the room or on a long table where somebody playing Monopoly or Risk on the opposite end of a long table, you might not be able to see. But I'm going to see that. I'm going to walk down to that and say, all right, what do I need to get that? And I want to learn more about that game. And do I roll them? Do I snap things onto them? Do I build it? What? I want to know. That's
yeah,
really,
well,
really cool.
I think I had, when I played it at the convention, I had the good fortune of having somebody else set up everything and teach me how to play it. And the setup is a little confusing because of I don't know. You'd understand if you did it. It's slight. What is the word for it? It's like transposed. It's like two things are ahead here and two things are forward here, and you're like, wait. It just needs a board. It needs a mat or something.
Okay.
But yeah, because it's just, but it's going to be expensive already because of these fancy magnets and stuff. So it doesn't have a mat. A play mat would make it less stressful to teach and set up, I think. But
you know, it's currently $29.99 on Amazon. So I mean, a $30 game with magnets is really reasonable.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor. Yeah. You know what that game does really well, and I feel like we can throw an aside here into game design concepts real quick. Is what that game does is its presence asks a question. Like you see it and you think, okay, I need to know more. It asks you, like you said, what do I do with this? How does this work? And I think that's a really good sign of not necessarily of a balanced game or a good game, but a game that is well designed to draw interest. It's like when your game is laid out, does it ask a question of the potential audience or players? Do they see that and think, okay, tell me more? Like, does it build intrigue? And I think that game asks a really interesting question just in its proposition, its physical space. Because Jay and I both lit up when we saw it, knowing nothing about it.
And as a designer too, I think if you see those pieces, you're going to try to intuit what those things mean. Oh, I see like and like. I see forest and forest. Kind of in Carcassonne, you can look at Carcassonne and you can kind of intuit some of the rules just by seeing how the pieces are constructed. And there, I'm already starting to make assumptions. I might be right, I might be wrong, but I can look at that and can start to make assumptions. And I know what I would do if I were playing this, and I know. And it just, as a designer, like when I just lit up, like, ooh, I want to play with that.
We got one more.
The Lego games.
Yeah, I have a lot of these.
Man.
We've got that entire series because of our kids.
Yeah. And I grabbed this one. I mean, Lego games, I guess, I found all these before I was in the game world, involved in the game industry. And it seems like there's a lot of poo-pooing of them in the game industry, which I find odd because they have this cool thing where all of them have a buildable dice, which makes them a really interesting, like, and they come with extra faces, and and it also tells you can make up your own rules for this game. Like, it encourages you to be creative.
I think the reason why it's poo-pooed is, as game designers, we all look at this, and Legos are still, we are still the target market for Legos, right? We still love Legos. But come on, the game is for younger kids. Why isn't the game more sophisticated and advanced for me, who still wants to play with Legos? What's the reason?
Maybe. I mean, but I think a lot of them are good games. Like this one,
some of them are really good for kids.
This one is the one I grabbed because it's like hard. It's a hard game. The Hobbit one. It has this. Let me see if I can. Oh, how does it work, Jay? Do I have to take the tent out of the middle?
It's been a long time since I've played that, and there's so many of them to remember all of those. But they're nice little orc one pieces, which are about the size of a one leg of a regular minifig. So a lot of the pieces are size or smaller.
There's a special kind of minifig that come in all of these games that are this big that just fit on one peg. And so this one is a memory game. Like, what you do is you take this little so it sounds like a total kid game, right? Like, what a kid game. It has this little tent in the center, which was holding it together. And you take this torch and you take the lid off the houses to see what's in there. And you're trying to make matches. Okay, so total kid game, right? Except that because it's Lego, it has these hinges. And after you take something out, you move.
This is brilliant.
You move the houses around in Hobbiton, which is not very thematic. Like, it's not like in Hobbiton, like Yeah.
But who cares? It's
Let's just move around, but
Yeah, this should be a Harry Potter Lego game with like rotating
Oh.
staircases and things
That-
changing position.
That's also a thing.
Yeah,
Hogwarts is one of them that I have too.
There you go. There you
So,
go. But
yeah.
that's so fun. I just realized our topic for today was toys, and we
Yes.
could go for 5 hours.
Yes, I didn't realize it when I wrote it out until I went into my game room. I was like, I need to find my examples. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a huge pile of examples because I like toys.
It was hard to just narrow it down to a few, and then I keep on seeing the things on the shelf or other things come to mind. Oh man, but we've still got other stuff in the show that we were gonna do or talk about. Or
Let's try and do the pitch or the game idea if we have time for that.
Well, I think we only have 5 minutes, so let's do the question because that's faster. And we have at least one voter, so we can test how using your Spielbucks works. So everybody,
all right,
let's
give that a go.
If you never thought each individual vote counted,
right, it definitely does.
Today it does.
So even if I know that we have turned on safe chat, so you might not have gone through the hoops to chat, but I think you should still be able to interact with our shop, like the Spielbucks shop. So if you are not used to Twitch, below where you can write something in chat, there's a little money sign that says if you hover over it, it's called Spielbucks. If you click on it, you'll see I think you might have a get started button, and just go ahead and click that, and you'll see things you can buy for your channel points. You're earning those whether or not you're a subscriber, and it's amount of time that you spend watching us. There's some other ways you can earn it too.
Yep.
So
and the first three things you'll see there are C, B, and A.
Right.
So just by clicking one of those, you can vote, and it may just be. Oh no, we've got a few people here in the chat now. So I've thrown out the questions, and these are questions for us on the panel to answer. So what do you want us to answer? Who is someone you admire and why? Name the most impossible thing on your bucket list. That's B. Or C, what has been your best purchase this year? And overwhelmingly, one person has voted for A.
Well, no, the one person is cheating and spending extra Spielbucks.
No, they're using capitalism to get their way.
I suppose.
No, let's give it to Baron von Scump, because since it is a 50-50 tie, I want to give it to the first person to vote. So the question for us today is, name the most impossible thing. Not this time, Prince Joachim. Not this time. Name the most impossible thing on your bucket list and why. Jay, why don't I throw that to you first? Let's just keep it under. Let's keep it under a minute. I won't pull out the whole timer now because we're at the end of the show.
This is really, really difficult because my bucket list basically are the licenses that I still want to work on as a game designer, and theoretically I have access to them if I partner with the right person. But the licenses that I have not been able to work on yet are Marvel. I would love to work on Marvel. I would love to work on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I would love to work on a Bethesda title. Now, I had designed a role-playing game, the T220 system, which is used in the official Fallout role-playing game, but I didn't design it specifically for Fallout. So I'd love to work on like a Fallout game or a Skyrim /
Wait, you worked on the Fallout game?
So I did the engine that runs the Fallout role-playing game, the 2D20 system from Modiphius.
Oh, okay. It's a different Fallout game than the one I have. I have a different RPG
And then another bucket list item is I would love to do another narrative dice system game like I did for Star Wars Edge of the Empire. There's the generic Genesis system for it, but I'd love to be able to tailor like that would be great for Marvel, but there's already a new Marvel role-playing game coming out, and that would be great for other things too. So most of my bucket list items are just licenses that I want to work with that I haven't or go back to. Like I'd love to do more Star Wars stuff, always and forever. So that's me.
Okay. Heather, do you want to go next, or do you want me to go and then you can finish us out?
I can go ahead.
Do you need more time? Go ahead then.
Well, I don't have like an official bucket list that I keep or anything. I think a lot of it. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think bucket list, though, is travel. and just places I'd like to see and go. I love collecting experiences of places that I've been. And it does feel right now with the pandemic pretty impossible for these things to happen. We have talked about, I guess I'm going to give away the deets here, but my husband and I are about 5 weeks apart in age, and we're going to turn 40 next year. And he wants to go to Victoria Falls in South Africa.
Oh, whoa.
I would love that too. But I don't know if that's going to happen.
This is Will we're talking about?
Yeah. Wow. Another thing about us that I've mentioned on some streams is we like to read Agatha Christie together. And one of the first ones early in her career, we're reading them from the first one she read through, mostly. I think we're missing a couple of them, but whatever. One of her very early ones is called The Man in the Brown Suit. And it's still like Will's favorite. And it's about that place. And it just like captured his imagination and made him want to go there. So
cool.
I guess it's his dream, but I'm on board with it. And I would like to go to every place I would like to go. Going to China. Oh, that one probably feels the most impossible, but it would be so cool to see the Great Wall.
That's really cool. My brain went to partially to travel as well. I don't have a written out bucket list either, but it's the most impossible thing that it's hard because most of the things that I have on that list, even though they seem unlikely, I still feel like there's a chance that I might do it. Like my wife and I want to open a bed and breakfast one day, and that's nowhere on our radar right now. But maybe like when we're 50 or 60 and the kids are gone, and like that's something we have the skill set for. We both love cooking and entertaining, and we like staying in bed and breakfasts and like the window into the personality of that place and that town that they can provide when you travel. I want to hike a lot of places, and I would love to hike all of the Appalachian Trail at some point, and I have that as a sort of bucket list, but I might do that one day. I have this map behind me with little QR codes of the places I've been on the trail so far.
Here, let me make that. Let me make that larger, Michael. Just a second.
Okay.
Are you saying you want to hike it all at once? Like that's the bucket list is
like,
to do it.
To do a through hike.
Go?
Yeah, and again, that currently it's a lot of miles, y'all. It's like 2,000 plus miles to get up to Maine. And to do it all takes like 3 or 4 months. And right now, that again feels impossible. But there's probably a stage of my life where it's not. So I think the most impossible thing is I want to go to space. Like, I don't mean I want to fly for 3 minutes in weightless gravity. I mean, I want to go sit down in a colony on another planet where humanity has expanded. And in my lifetime, I don't think that's very likely. But it would be really cool to do. So I think that's the most improbable on my list. Although the other two aren't likely, but who knows? I'm going to try and... It does freak me out. That's the other reason it's unlikely. Because it's terrifying.
Cryogenics.
Yeah. Once there's a Starbucks there, I want to go. Like that level of settlement. So that's it. Walking like 3 to 4 months is a couple of weeks is insane. That's like 90 miles a day.
Are you able to ride bikes on the Appalachian Trail? Would that change the timing at all?
Almost all of it is untraversable by even a mountain bike. So no, that wouldn't be a way to go about it. And I think people that go want to spend that much time on the trail. It's just about finding a part of your life where you can disconnect from so much. Yeah. I mean, people have careers, they have families, they have other hobbies and interests. It's a very specialized, devoted thing to do. But
Appalachia is the podcast Old Gods of Appalachia.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Cthulhu in Appalachia country.
Very good. Well, I'm so happy that we got to try out that game and make sure our Spielbucks are working. Yay!
The voting worked great. Thank you for demoing that.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got to play that. We'll just use the Board Gameizer thing for next week. It's fine. We'll do it next. We had too many fun toys to talk about this week, so we can call it good there. But thank you all for joining us. Next week, actually, we are not going to do Table Talk. because instead we're going to do a Q&A for Protospiel Online. Since Protospiel Online April starts the day after our next stream. And I know lots of people have questions, especially if they're first-time people, and there are also maybe going to be a lot of questions about the first-time Tabletop Simulator is not part of the event. That might create a lot of questions too. So we'll just use this time for that. And then in the evening, normally we do Protospiel Tested in the evenings, but we're moving it to about every other week, except for, again, next week, since it's right before Protospiel Online. We're going to go through all of the prototypes that are on our website and show them all off, kind of do a prototype showcase. So if you're watching this and you're coming and you haven't put your prototype in that showcase, I'm only going to show the ones that are listed for April. So go ahead and, even if you brought it before, put it back up so that we see them as a set of what's coming for April. And really looking forward to that. Just under a week away, or just a little over a week away before Protospiel Online April. Very excited to have both y'all joining us as moderators too. So
bring your questions next week, and let people know that our first timers, if you know someone's going to Protospiel and might have questions, tell them to tune in so they could ask them. We will do our best to handle any questions that come, and we're excited to just welcome people into the April event.
And that game Joachim is mentioning is called Bigfoot Roll and Smash, coming soon to Kickstarter. One of our ongoing sponsors for Protospiel Online is XYZ, so that's what makes Joachim think of them. So thanks for reminding me of that. But everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.